Today on CityCast Nashville, it's time for our Friday News Roundup. We always like to end the week with the biggest news stories in town and break them down for you with journalists, comedians, and anybody else we can convince to come on the show. With early voting underway, some folks are wondering why Nashville has 3 congressional districts now. Well, we'll get into the story behind that gerrymandering. We're also talking about why the Titans are having a fire sale, the news that the National Women's Soccer League might expand to Nashville, and a recent TikTok video's thesis saying that Nashville is the Nashville airport. I'm joined by Tennessee Lookout reporter Adam Friedman and executive producer Whitney Pasterik. CityCast Nashville is presented by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. And hey, stay tuned for our Tecovas Don't Go Gently tip for this weekend at the end of the show. It's Friday, October 25th. I'm Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Today, we're tackling a complicated issue that directly impacts voters here in Nashville, and that's called gerrymandering. Woo! Oh, cheer there. Yay. Back in 2022, Nashville was split into 3 congressional districts. Adam, welcome. Can you explain how splitting us into different districts changes the kind of political representation we have in those areas?
In an election, the most competitive ones, the most sort of moderate candidates maybe you get is when seats are flippable, right? So if it's like a 50% Democrat, 50% Republican, 55-45, right? You get sort of candidates who have to appeal to both parties. But when you split them and create them into like 65-35, 60-40, I'm talking percentages of one party, you create the system where actually you're running in a primary. In the primary, you're often having to run to your farthest right or farthest left to win. And then it sort of creates that issue where then all of a sudden you have candidates who are less moderate, less willing to compromise. Sort of it's a whole downhill effect from there.
And this happened to us because the Republican state legislators decided that instead of Nashville being one safe blue district, like you were talking about, where I think we were like 70-30, they wanted to crack Nashville into 3 districts that were no longer safe Democratic districts, but would in fact become safe Republican districts, correct?
In the legislature's defense, every state that can do this does this. So you can see this across Democrat and Republican states, because ultimately the goal is to get 218 seats in the House, U.S. House. And especially now the House is like 222 to 215. I mean, it's as tight as it's really ever been. And so every flippable seat, every chance you can flip is worth it, right? So here, there was a calculation that there were enough Republican voters surrounding sort of the Nashville area that you could split Nashville up into 3 seats without sacrificing the chance that you would basically lose 2 seats, right? The problem you could have with gerrymandering, so in 2012, Republicans mainly swept across the country in 2010, so they redrew a ton of maps across a ton of states. But by 2018 of that cycle, Democrats sort of broke in the Republicans' gerrymandering. They won congressional majorities in that cycle, in that midterm election. And so this time around is kind of a redrawing. So what happens, right, is it might be gerrymandered for 2024, 26, 28, but by 2028 or 2030, that could be broken because population shift, people move, people change political views, whatever it is. So that's the thing in Nashville, right? So right now, it seems like there are 3 Republican seats, but they're a little bit closer, right? So Megan Barry's going up against Mark Green. You know, that race could be under 10 percentage points, which would be a lot closer than Mark Green's ever had a race his entire basic existence. So there is a chance it kind of flips back eventually, but the goal ultimately, right, was to create more Republican seats so you can win Congress.
The NAACP filed a federal lawsuit after our new lines were drawn, saying that they were racially motivated. But a federal court dismissed that suit, saying the complaint alleges facts consistent with a racial gerrymander, but the facts are also consistent with a political gerrymander. What does that mean?
Yeah, the Supreme Court essentially has ruled that political gerrymandering is allowed. So if you're gerrymandering for a political benefit, that supersedes pretty much any other existing laws.
And what's the benefit? What did they say the benefit is?
Basically, it's that there's no laws that say we have anti-discrimination laws, but we have no political discrimination laws, right? If you can do things in political incentives, basically. I mean, at times if you have a population, so like in Alabama, they have a high enough minority population so that they basically had to draw 2 majority minority districts. In Tennessee, we have somewhere between 15 and 20% non-white. So that translates out of our 9 seats to 1.5. So if maybe Tennessee had 10 seats, which is possible the next time around. Tennessee's been growing. There are some studies that show that Tennessee should have gotten another congressional seat actually in 2020, but the census wasn't really that well done. Then you could see the chance that there could be another Democratic seat because they'll have to draw a majority of minority district, which means the majority of the people in that district are a minority population. And that kind of brings the seat back into maybe not even quite a Democrat hand, but at least back into play, which then creates a more moderate seat. And then it kind of becomes more competitive and draws money and all that stuff.
Why is it important to have that accurate census when it comes to things like proper representation along racial lines?
I mean, we all want to be represented, right? Really, right now in Nashville, there is no Nashville-based representative, right? That is sort of one of the cruxes of the whole problem, is that all three representatives that represent parts of Nashville are all located in cities outside Nashville. Now, not every city in America has their own representative, but Nashville is one of the biggest 30 cities, right? I think that many of the 30 cities have at least one person from that city representing them in Congress, right? I mean, this is going back to a whole issue of like way we do census, which is we count people by hand versus like population surveys are a better estimate. And those show Tennessee has enough people to have 10 reps. So that means one of our reps, I think, is either in California should give us one back, or Florida. Maybe there's a few states where you can look at where they basically have an extra rep that we should potentially have, which gives you more power, right? Bigger delegation, chance for more seats in Congress. It's just like it's hard to count every single person. It takes a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time, and it's not always that accurate because it's a lot of human error in that, where like we now have sort of statistical ways to measure people much better than we could by hand. Now in 1790, whenever it was created, of course, counting people by hand made sense. How else were you going to do it back 200 years ago? But today we have lots of different ways to track people and figure out where people are.
So what would it take for this area to become ungerrymandered? What would we need to happen at the state level in order for the lines that are currently drawn to change?
So some states have independent commissions, I guess they're kind of called, that basically it's supposed to be sort of a nonpartisan commission. So each party appoints 4 members and they draw the maps in sort of a way that is determined to be fair among all the board members, right? Oftentimes what that means is sort of like not breaking up communities of interest. Is that sort of like the term is like, not breaking up Nashville, the city, because every person in Nashville sort of wants the same thing from Congress, right? Or trying to link rural areas together that all have similar interests in what they would want from Congress. There is I believe it's the John Lewis Act in Congress that was presented last time that didn't pass, but that basically would force every state to create a nonpartisan commission to draw these maps. And that's really where it's going to be done, because there's no incentive for state legislatures who have been drawing their maps and benefiting from on both, like I said, I would say, again, both parties to do that. There's no incentive to, when you're in power, to give the other person power, right? So it has to sort of come from the federal level.
We saw in Tennessee Lookout that you had reported on the very first day of early voting that more than 200,000 Tennesseans cast their ballots. You also said that surpassed 2016, but not 2020.
I saw on Wednesday, the Davidson County Election Commission tweeted that our total was at 99,626. And in 2020, it was 110,000.
The big thing that from the voting, it seems like, is that it is not on pace to break 2020's early vote, but that also with the pandemic, that sort of makes things different, right? There were more people wanting to vote either early or absentee ballot during that time. The thing about early voting in general is Tennessee usually has a pretty high early vote. In general, we just don't have a good overall vote, right? We rank in the bottom 5 states for overall voter turnout.
What's your sense on the ground? Is there as much energy as in 2020? I mean, we're hearing these reports of there being long lines, but obviously the numbers say we're still, 10,000 votes behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing about this election is that ultimately the way the presidential elections goes, 7 states matter, right? Tennessee is not one of those 7. And so it makes it hard.
Well, we matter.
I mean,
we just don't matter.
You're right. You're right. I said that wrong.
We're special.
No, everyone's vote matters. I mean, in the sense of we are not going to be the deciding state in this election, which is sort of what's why we're not getting the TV advertisements.
Thank God.
Yeah. So there's not like this. Like that's kind of the thing about Tennessee with the low voter turnout in general is that the argument is that there isn't enough competitive races. We have a few, right? I think the House District 7. I talked about earlier, Greene and Barry is sort of maybe competitive. There are probably 4 to 5 state house seats that are competitive, although those don't always reach people the same way that a presidential race does.
And are you surprised that the transit referendum isn't bringing more people out in droves? And do you think that enough people in town know about the transit referendum for that to matter?
I am not surprised it's not bringing people out in droves. It's a very niche issue, right? It is not like it has not gotten this publicity like the last one did for being a massive plan, right? So it's not as just attention grabbing as the last one. There's not been a huge negative campaign. I did get a mailer the other day from the Vote No people.
I have not gotten a single mailer this entire cycle. Marie, have you voted yet?
I did. I didn't post my selfie. Yay! Shame on me. I lost the sticker immediately as I walked out. But I did vote.
We need better stickers. We can take that up next time.
Yeah, in Michigan, they have some crazy stickers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think we need fake tattoos.
I like when they have contests and they let elementary school kids draw them. That would be way cooler.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about my absolute favorite thing, and that is sports.
All right, admit it. It's time to replace your not-so-trusty old boots. You know the best place to shop for quality, handcrafted men's and women's boots is at your local Tacova store, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by the Ryman. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from, so stop by and grab a cold one as you peruse. Tacova's Nashville is at your service. It's always a challenge to find boots that fit well and can survive a night walking around town, but you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of Tacova's expert staff. Your new Western boots can elevate a casual look or add a refined flair to any outfit. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tacovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
We're back, and like I said, I love sports so much. I love sports so much the first time... First time I ever went to a sports concert was to see Taylor Swift at our Titan Stadium.
A sports concert.
A sports concert. But it was the first time I'd gone to our stadium, even though I was raised here.
I'm surprised it didn't crumble down around your ears, Marie. You're lucky that you got out of there alive. Well, the bad news, folks, is that the Tennessee Titans are not a good football team this year. They've got a 1-5 record, and they've clearly given up because they're having a fire sale, half off on all Titans players this week. News broke on Wednesday that the team was trading wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs. And QB Will Levis, a.k.a. Mayo Boy, has a shoulder injury that may keep him out of this weekend's game, where he wouldn't really have anyone to pass to anyway because they've traded away their stud wide receiver. So how are we feeling about that new stadium now, folks?
Grumble, grumble, grumble.
I mean, there's obviously nothing we can do about it at this point, but I'm curious to find out if the impact of the Titans having this truly disastrous season right after all of that hubbub around the need for a new stadium starts to sour people on this franchise more than they might already be. Adam, what do you think?
So I will preface that I am a Colts fan, so that my Titans takes are, I know.
Get off my podcast.
We're not very good either. So, I mean, our quarterback.
That's true, because the Houston Texans are amazing.
Yeah,
carry on.
Our young quarterback can't really hit a 10-yard pass when he tries. I mean, I think the stadium's 2027. They got 2 years to figure it out, right? That's part of football, right? Usually you can bottom out, maybe get a good quarterback. I mean, it's all about that ultimately. I think the Patriots have the worst record in the league right now, but certainly going to be competition between the Titans and Patriots for it. And Patriots already have a quarterback, so
and you know what? That's a really great point. I remember in several of the Houston Texans seasons where we were the worst team in the league and basically playing for draft picks. And there was one year, I can't remember what it was, where we could have had the number 1 draft pick, but then we won our final game of the season. Yeah. And I remember being in a sports bar with everybody in Texans jerseys being like, no! So yeah, maybe the future will look bright. Something though that I am excited about, and I want to pivot to this because it is much better news. Nashville is officially one of the 5 finalists for a National Women's Soccer League expansion team. Sports agent Lonnie Murray is leading a team of investors hoping to score the league's 16th team. They've received the blessing of Mayor O'Connell, assuming that no public money is needed to finance this, and John Ingram, more importantly, who built Geodis Park and owns Nashville SC, which is our men's team. And the team would play at Geodis, which is a dedicated, beautiful soccer facility. Mm-hmm. This has me extremely excited. Marie, did you play soccer at all growing up?
Not at all. No sports.
No sports.
I auditioned for all sports. Hence the audition. I then quickly pivoted to theater. I tried out for softball, soccer, volleyball, basketball, all those things at all of our lovely public schools here and didn't make any team. And then I ended up playing church basketball for 5 years, which I was the only person in the whole league that got worse the longer she played. And my final senior year, I made 2 points and the entire gymnasium cheered for me because they knew how bad I was.
Maybe you will be excited that there is also potentially a WNBA team for Nashville in the books, although that one is less certain because we don't have a dedicated venue and I don't believe that any ownership group has stepped up. But honestly, it's a great moment here in our city where we're actually talking about having a little bit of equity between men's professional sports teams and women's professional sports teams, which I define as, can you play the sport and not necessarily need a full-time job in order to pay your rent? Adam, what do you think? Can Middle Tennessee support a women's soccer team? Could they support a women's soccer team and a women's basketball team? What's your sense?
I mean, I think it's a great idea in the sense that the stadium's already there, right? So you don't have to build a new stadium. You don't have to build that much new stuff. It's kind of the way Bridgestone is good for hockey and also good for concerts every weekend, right? You sort of get a multi-use out of it. So adding a women's soccer team means you don't need a new stadium, fits all sort of what's been sort of the mood of the city of like kind of anti-public money, especially since the Titan Stadium. I think they could play basketball at Bridgestone. I mean, a lot of the NBA teams play in the hockey arenas, they're split way, like the Wizards play in one, I believe. I think there is some benefit for WNBA teams being in the same city as men's teams. The Fever, where I'm from, Indianapolis, they play in the same stadium as the Pacers. That's certainly been a benefit. They're owned by the same people too, so there's some benefit of sort of having the ownership who understand just like how to run basketball games, right? Like how to fill stand, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if an owner wants to come in and play at Bridgestone, I don't know why it would be really an issue. I mean, Bridgestone's a popular arena, so that might be the only problem, right? It's usually always filled, I feel like, when I look on the schedule.
It does have a lot of stuff going on in there, but don't worry, all of those concerts will move to our new enclosed football stadium once that's built, because obviously they can all sell out 65,000 tickets a night. I, as someone who did grow up playing soccer, and this was in the 80s, I think it is hugely important for little kids in general to see that women can be valued and cheered and celebrated just as much as the men. I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't even a real U.S. women's national team. And so when you think back about, those World Cup years, 91, kind of nobody paying attention, but then you get to 99 and the Brandi Chastain ripping her shirt off, and what a moment that was. And I just remember sitting there as a full-grown adult thinking, if I was 8 years old right now and I knew that there was a chance to grow up and be that, I would have taken soccer a lot more seriously. So I just think it's super cool for the kids.
Like, I think women's college basketball has gotten almost better than men's college basketball in some ways of the year recently, and I think there's a good chance.
Yes.
And we're Tennessee, right? This is the home of the Lady Vols and Pat Summitt, who is a legendary coach whose effects ripple through to this day. I mean, there are still coaches citing her as a major influence. So I think Tennessee could definitely support women's basketball. I do think we're going to get soccer first, and I will be second in line to buy those season tickets because my friend Steph is already first in line.
Amazing. All right, we're going to take one more little break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss social media, content versus art. Whitney, something caught your attention on social media this week that made us all cringe. Thank you for sharing that with us. You saw a video made by Rick, aka Clout.Eater on TikTok.
Clout.Eater.
Yes, that's right. His name is Clout.Eater on TikTok. Whitney, can you break it down for us a little bit, what you saw? And listeners at home, we're actually going to put a link to the video of the TikTok in the show notes for everybody to see.
You must. This came across my Instagram. I want to make it clear that I do not now, nor will I ever have a TikTok, but it was one of those Instagram reels that got lifted from the TikTok. And it was by Clout.Eater. And he had come to visit Nashville. And he put up 3 videos. The one that stood out to me the most was this one that basically was titled, "Nashville is the Nashville Airport." And he started out by talking about how the city kind of matches the way that country music's journey has gone, starting by quoting Chet Atkins in the 1950s when they asked him like what was country music, and he jangled the change in his pocket, and saying, it's developed from there into something with less twang, less edge, something less like itself and more like something else, which made me spit out a mouthful of coffee. Other phrases he used to describe Nashville in this TikTok were formaldehyde of hyper-reality, quasi-outsider identity that Nashville offers tourists. And then he said, we sit at the intersection of everything you want and everything they want to make available to you, and it looks exactly like the Nashville airport. So his thesis statement was that all these iconic places in town that have opened branches in the Nashville airport, where we want to remind everybody, you can just go hang out now. But there's nothing that these places offer at their flagship locations that can't, as he said, can't just as easily be reproduced by a team of minimum wage contractors, which like, yikes. Marie, obviously it rang true to you too. You're from here.
I mean, I think that it's just such an interesting perception from a tourist. We're always fighting locals versus tourists. And is the city for us, or is it the city for tourists? And so then to see a video like this that truly captures how I think people who have never come to Nashville, and this is exactly what they experience, and then they leave our beautiful, amazing town and go back and tell them that, when you go to Nashville, just don't even leave the airport. It's just the same thing. That breaks my heart, because we are so much more than that. CityCast Nashville, I mean, truly, since working here, I've learned about all these amazing organizations and groups of people all over our town that enrich people's lives, that are out there fighting the good fight. Adam, you're one of them. So to hear and see a video like this, yes, it is true. I think we're just marketing specifically for tourists. But if you just leave the airport, leave downtown, Nashville is so, so much more than that. Adam, what do you think?
It certainly was a good take on capitalism. I know this videos
yeah, it truly is.
I have this trouble because I have people who come visit me. And, I'm newest to Nashville. I've been in Tennessee about 7 years almost now. I moved here in, 6 years, October of 18. There's Nashville. I always try to tell everyone to come, down to Nashville isn't actually where you want to be. There's so much cooler stuff everywhere else, right? Like, it might not even be, the original way it was, Southern, that sort of old style, but so many people have moved here. There's so many different cultures that have sort of converged here. And so that's where it gets kind of frustrating to see, right? Because the tourists that come in don't see that. We don't necessarily have a city also that's really actually connectable outside of downtown if you don't know what you're doing, right? If you don't have a car, you can't go anywhere, right? It took me a little while to figure out, here's where I want to go in Nashville. Here's the spots to go, in South Nashville, to go out when I go out west, to go East Nashville, to go wherever it is, Madison, like that. You have to sort of find those. And once you live here, you do. But to me, it's like any kind of city. The only problem is Nashville is such a brand.
Marie, we do have a plan. Adam, you're welcome to join us. We're going to do, in the coming months, we're going to start working on an airport versus OG location taste test restaurant tour. And we're going to report those results back.
I do have a theory that I want
Tell us.
We're going to really do some investigative journalism. I think they pour more heavy at the airport. So we're going to find out if that's true or not.
Plus, you can just apparently buy a bottle of Jack Daniels and walk around drinking it in the airport. Which I still think you can't quite do that downtown.
Yeah.
But maybe you can. What do I know?
Yeah, I don't think, I think we still have open carry laws theoretically. Maybe if the street's closed off, you can walk down the street, but yeah.
Theoretically. Well, they do need to close that street. We had 2 pedestrians get killed down there again last weekend, both of which I think were from out of town. One happened late Thursday night when police said that somebody drove over the curb near Commerce and 4th. And then the second one happened when somebody was killed walking in a crosswalk at the intersection of 12th and Broad. I feel like we just keep making arguments for this transit referendum. The other thing you mentioned, Adam, too, is like when tourists do come here, there really isn't a way for them to get around and experience other parts of town. Like my friends are coming from Sweden and I was like, well, just stay downtown or in the Gulch because I don't know how you would get anywhere.
Yeah, unless you're renting a car, and it's about the only way to.
Yeah, as opposed to those wonderful cities that we all love to go visit where we hop on their version of the subway or the metro and pop out in front of the Eiffel Tower. So it's fine. Nashville's great. Everyone should come here.
Or don't.
Marie, what's a positive note?
Well, The weather is going to be lovely this weekend. The leaves are changing. Get outside, experience all the fall festivities. Go, carve a pumpkin.
Yes.
Find the places that have the big
So much Halloween.
candy bars. That's my advice for you. And now it's time for your Tecovas Don't Go Gently tip for this weekend. Celebrate the news that Nashville might be getting a professional women's soccer franchise by heading over to Geodis Park to cheer on the U.S. women's national team in a friendly match against Iceland. Olympic gold medalists are on the roster, from Rose Lavelle to Naomi Girma to Mallory Swanson, who will mark her 100th game as a national team member. Kickoff is at 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, and you can also reserve a spot on Saturday to watch the team practice ahead of the game. Remember, y'all, don't go gently, go into Tecovas. That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Our executive producer is Whitney Pastrick. Our producers are Adam Sage, we love you, buddy, and me, Marie Cecile Anderson. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prof Jenkins. If you enjoy the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!